course, your Pan-African show, Bottomline Africa, begins right now. On our Twitter poll tonight, we're asking you, do you think the Commonwealth League of Nations is beneficial to Africa? Do you think the Commonwealth League of Nations is beneficial to Africa? Would like to hear your comment. You know the drill. Our Twitter handle is at KTN News. You can as well tweet me at Yusuf Ibra. The hashtag to use, as always, is Bottomline Africa. Now, let me begin with our top story tonight, and it's from the most populous country in Africa, that is Nigeria. The mess stolen from Nigeria's parliament has been recovered under a flyover in the capital, Abuja. Several intruders rushed into the Senate, the upper chamber of the National Assembly, and grabbed the ceremonial staff during a session yesterday. The Senate spokesperson accused suspended Senator Ovi Omogege of leading the armed hoodlums, saying they had committed treason. He has since been arrested and denies any involvement in the theft. The police say they set up roadblocks and launched stop and search operations in the wake of the theft. In a statement, the police said the mess was eventually found under a flyover. Now, the police chief has ordered security is set to be beefed up, of course, at Parliament as a consequence. Now, members of the East African Legislative Assembly have tabled a report of the 12 days mission that embarked to assess progress and challenges of the regional bloc. Our correspondent Godfrey Badebie is in Dodoma, Tanzania, where the Assembly is sitting and centers this report voiced by Fatia Mohamed Noor. Take a look.
Early this year, the East African Legislative Assembly, IALA, embarked on a tour of the region to assess the status of joint regional projects. The members went in separate groups, traversing the length and breadth of all the corridors within the region. In this fourth sitting of the first session in Dodoma, the committee has submitted a report which reveals that the tension between Rwanda and Burundi has resulted in a freeze on trade between the two countries.
The delegation was informed that this OSBP was closed in 2016 due to disagreement between the government of Rwanda and government of Burundi over a number of issues, some of them as the following. There was installation of CCTV cameras before proper consultations. The security agencies accessing the OSBP on numerous occasions with arms which were not registered as required by the OSBP operation manual. There was loss of lives and there was a ban of export of food products. Due to the above issues, there is limited trade between Burundi and Rwanda through Ruhwa border post.
In the spirit of regional integration, the legislators were dismayed by what points?
I don't want to believe some way bridges within the partner states at times don't give the same ways for the same cargo, which frustrates the business community. So there is need for harmonization. To observe the way all the various way bridges have different ways rates. There's need for a standard gauge rail connection from ports of entry to all partner states to reduce time and cost of doing business.
The need for better communication has been cited as one of the gaps that need to be addressed among other recommendations. The issue of the official language was, however, left out of the discussion.
The recommendation from the committee, from this southern central corridor, it should stipulate very well that the council or speaker now, they should bring a bill here in this house in order that we form the official language. That's what I mean.
So considering then moving an amendment to the report to include those things you say, because protesting is not enough. And I would rather that he moves it in Kiswahili, because he is fighting for Kiswahili but in English.
The findings are expected to inform policy decisions to help improve the East African community.
Council to direct the partner states to increase the funding to the institution of community for their growth and execution of their mandate. The Council to ensure adequate staffing within the institution to effectively discharge their mandate. The Council to direct partner states to put in place the missing facilities at the OSBPs and along the corridors to have a standard OSBPs.
The legislators, however, noted that East African citizens need consensus
Thank you, Fathia, for that report. Now, the British monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, says she wants her son, Prince Charles, to replace her as the head of the Commonwealth. She was speaking at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. Our decision on whether Prince Charles will succeed her as a head of the Commonwealth is expected from the heads of state on Friday. 19 of the 53 Commonwealth states are African. Many are former British colonies, but Rwanda and Mozambique also became members in recent years, while Zimbabwe left amid reports of election rigging in 2003. Gambia, which left the group of Commonwealth nations, was readmitted earlier this year. The meeting, taking place in London for the first time in 20 years, is seen as a chance for Britain to reconnect with its former colonies and revitalize the loose alliance of 53 Commonwealth countries ahead of Brexit.
Or something in the distance, so close you could almost taste it. Release your inhibitions. No one else.
In the Commonwealth, we have an incredible opportunity. An opportunity to show just what can be achieved through coordinated action and cooperation. To seize the possibilities open to us as member countries, and together to take on some of the 21st century's biggest questions.
And I pray that this Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting will not only revitalise the bonds between our countries, but will also give the Commonwealth a renewed relevance to all its citizens, finding practical solutions to their problems and giving life to their aspirations.
It is my sincere wish that the Commonwealth will continue to offer stability and continuity for future generations, and will decide that one day the Prince of Wales should carry on the important work started by my father in 1949. By continuing to treasure and reinvigorate our associations and activities, I believe we will secure a safer, more prosperous and sustainable world for those who follow us.
Now in studio to tell us more about the history and significance of the Commonwealth is British High Commissioner to Kenya, Nick Haley. Good evening, sir. Welcome to the program.
Great to be here.
We've seen that gathering there in London. It's something that happens every, is it 3 or 4 years?
Every couple of years.
Yeah, what many Africans, are wondering, what this gathering really solve. Can you perhaps kick off this discussion by telling us?
Well, the theme of the Commonwealth Summit, and it's the first time it's been held in London for 20 years, as you said, is our common future. And this is an organisation that has a lot of history to it. You mentioned some of the history in your introduction. But it's an organisation that is a network for the future. We're living in a world where networks really count, and where all the problems we face are not ones we can solve on our own, but we have to connect with people. And here you've got an organisation with 1/3 of the world's population, 2.4 billion people, with 53 countries coming together to look at the problems of the future. And I think that's really important.
That's a huge number. And, the critics out there were saying, Commonwealth as an organisation is a loose organisation of countries, where different, countries that have different values come together. For example, Pakistan, Uganda, perhaps can you tell us, does Commonwealth as an organisation have a set of values in place?
So in 2012, the Commonwealth agreed a charter with some basic founding values that it aspires to: democracy, freedom of expression, the rule of law. And those are values that all of its member states sign up to. And they're powerful magnets. If you look at what happened to the Gambia, for example, which left the Commonwealth in 2013 under President Jammeh, one of the first things that the new president, Mr. Barrow, did when he won power in a democratic election was rejoin the Commonwealth as an affirmation that Gambia signs up to those democratic values and those values of freedom that everyone signs up to. So I think it has a lot of diversity within the organisation, but a very powerful statement of what everyone stands for together.
But I'm sure you'll agree with me, apart from Gambia, there are other countries that still have questionable, democratic credentials, and they're still part of Commonwealth. There are those countries who don't have, good records when it comes to human rights. Are these things that Commonwealth is keen on as well, as an organisation?
I think every democracy is a work in progress. Every country is striving for a more perfect form of government, including my own. And the Commonwealth can support with that. The Commonwealth has programmes to support with democracy, with the rule of law, with election observation. Was here, indeed, in Kenya, observing the elections last year with a Commonwealth delegation. So this is not a union of perfect countries. None of us is perfect, but it's a network that can help us all work better together for the future.
I think that's an important point. There's one overview, as you were saying, how can the Commonwealth nation, harness the potential of trade, intra-trade among these Commonwealth countries?
So a fifth of all trade in the world is between the countries of the Commonwealth. That's a pretty big number, but we could do a lot more. And one of the themes of the meeting that's happening today and tomorrow is trade facilitation. So how do you break down those nitty-gritty barriers that stop people trading better with each other? But underlying that, there's a fabric of connection in the Commonwealth. There's a common language, there's a common legal system in many of the countries. There's a lot of links between businesses. If you look at say the Indian business community here in Kenya, and the way that links the United Kingdom and India and Kenya together, that's a common factor to many Commonwealth countries. And indeed, we're working with Indian companies in our development program in Kenya to build those networks together.
But there's still the threat of China. Of course, that's a different debate altogether. Let's talk about, the role of Commonwealth now. Those who are saying, during the apartheid in South Africa, for example, Commonwealth played a very critical role. But there are those who believe that, Commonwealth has lost relevance since that time. What will you say about that?
I think any organisation of more than 50 countries is going to have to keep building its relevance. It's going to have to keep working out what it's for. But I think this summit's a really good opportunity to do that. So you look at some of the themes that the leaders will be talking about tomorrow and we're talking about today. Plastics in the oceans. How do we stop our oceans being polluted? Cyber security. Very modern theme, but hackers can sit in one country and challenge the security or the freedom of the internet in another. So we've got to work together to deal with that. Girls' education, making commitments so that all girls get 12 years of quality education. These are things that really matter to young people. And of course, the majority of the Commonwealth is young. Majority of those 2.4 billion people are under 30. So solving those problems that will come up in future decades is what's going to make the organisation as relevant and even more relevant in the future.
Speaking about tomorrow, from the summit or the meeting that is going on in London right now, one of the expectations is that, we might get news that there might be change of leadership from Queen Elizabeth II to Prince Charles. Is this something that African countries will also have a stake in?
Every country has an equal say. The funny thing about the Commonwealth is it's only ever had two leaders in its history. The Queen's father, the current Queen's father, and the Queen herself. And she's been the head of the Commonwealth since 1952, which is an incredibly long time, longer than you or I have been alive, I'm sure, and longer than most of your viewers will have been alive. So this is not a question that's come up very often. The United Kingdom, as one of the 53 members, our view is that it would be good for Prince Charles to succeed the Queen, and that he has the passion about the issues, the connections with all of the countries, the respect globally to do that. But we're just one of 53 countries, so it's a decision for all of the membership, and it's one of the things that they'll be talking through at Windsor Castle tomorrow.
Of course, we all expect that news to come out of London tomorrow. One final question perhaps about these two countries, Zimbabwe and Gambia. Gambia applied to leave the Commonwealth. They've been reinstated. Zimbabwe was suspended because of Robert Mugabe and the politics then. Perhaps, I don't know if you're the right person to answer this, but if you feel, if you feel free to talk about it. Should we expect Zimbabwe to be reinstated back again anytime soon?
I'm not a great expert on Zimbabwe, but my understanding is that after they were suspended in 2002, they chose to leave themselves in 2003. So it would obviously be their choice if they wanted to
Especially
rejoin.
with the change of leadership now under Mnangagwa.
Exactly, and that's what happened in Gambia, of course, is when the new president came in, he said, I would like to rejoin, and as part of that, I want to sign up to those democratic values again. So, and we certainly want to see Zimbabwe on a journey towards free and fair elections and towards greater democracy. That goes without saying. Yes,
one final question now.
Sure.
Perhaps can you tell us about the influence Commonwealth has right now, and perhaps some of the achievement they've made so far as an organisation?
Well, I think one thing when you see a summit, and this is the biggest summit we've ever held in the UK with almost 50 heads of state and government, is you think a lot about politicians and what they talk about in big rooms with big conference tables. But actually this is a lot about ordinary people as well. This is about, for example, our connecting Indian business people with Kenyan business people using British development aid to solve problems. It's about solving malaria, or I mentioned girls' education together. It's about scholarships. The Commonwealth Scholarship Programme takes people to study in different Commonwealth countries every year and builds connections through higher education. So I think this is something that can connect with people's lives right across Africa and indeed across the world.
Thank you very much, High Commissioner Nick Haley, for your input.
Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot. Now, let me take you over to Uganda. And do you remember the dramatic images out of Uganda in September last year? Well, if you have forgotten, here it is. We're going to bring it to you shortly. Now, a fierce fight and throwing of objects as honourable members of parliament resorted to the most dishonourable option to square out over a bill aimed at removing the presidential edge cup. Now, that matter is now before a constitutional court. There are 5 constitutional court judges presiding over the age limit petition at Mbale have had that the whole process of conceptualizing, debating and passing of the age limit bill in Parliament was marred with irregularities. The judges have also warned that the police brutality meted out to members of Parliament and the general populace last year can lead to the nullification of the age limit law. Very dramatic pictures there out of Uganda. I believe it was last year. Now, just to tell us more about today's development from Kampala, Uganda, I'm now joined by my colleague Solomon Serawanja. Solomon, good evening. Good to see you. Perhaps can you tell us what are some of the highlights today coming out of Uganda?
Well, a very good evening to you, Yusuf. We all remember those dramatic scenes. And yet this week has been a very long one for the panel of the Constitutional Court justices there, listening from the different people who submitted, including the main petitioners, the Attorney General and a private individual who also was applied to become a rejoinder in the case. Now, the verdict will be given on notice today. Cross-examination was concluded and all evidence presented. Now, the justices of the Constitutional Court have to, go and sit and look through the evidence that has been presented, open up law books and come up with a verdict. All eyes right now are on the Constitutional Court. But perhaps what stood out today, Yusuf, was the statement that came in from the Deputy Chief Justice, that is Alfonso Owiny-Doro, who said that the country needs to trust the justices that they will deliver a just decision, not hell-bent on any, without fear or favor. And he did come out to say that the image of the Constitutional Court needs to be changed. Now, we all know here in Uganda that the Constitutional Court has been going through a series of, image issues, especially when it was led by the former Deputy Chief Justice Stephen Kavuma. Now, just to bring you up close and personal with this petition, a number of issues are being challenged, including why we had Special Forces Command and UPDF officers in the House. Of course, one of the people who was brought before the witness stand was the Chief of Defense Forces for the Ugandan forces, that is General David Muhoozi, who said that the army had to move in to save the day, and he gave his evidence. He was cross-examined by the lawyers from both sides, and he has to, he explained to the panel of the judges, and they will give a verdict on that issue. The second issue, Yusuf, is whether it was right for legislators in Uganda to extend their tenure from 5 years to 7 years. That was also challenged, and of course we had the petitioner giving his side of the story, and indeed the Attorney General giving his side of the story. The other core issue on this matter is the amendment of Article 102B of the Constitution that lifted the age cap for the President. Now, the courts will be giving their judgment on that issue. Here in Uganda, it has been taken very, very sensitively because of the sub judice rule. So, Yusuf, all I can say is that in a week or so, we'll be hearing. Now, there are 2 scenarios that could come out of this ruling. If the petition is accepted, it will mean that the whole process will be nullified and Parliament will have to go through it once again if indeed they have to change the law. If indeed it's stamped and sealed with the decision of the Constitutional Court, it would mean that all issues that were raised will stand, including extending the tenure of members of Parliament from 5 years to 7 years, and also lifting the age cap, but also those who brought SFC or the Special Forces Command in Parliament will actually have a justification to say that there was a need to move the forces into the August Assembly. Yusuf.
Thank you very much, Solomon, for that comprehensive update. And it's not just Ugandans who are anxiously waiting for that ruling. Of course, East Africa and by extension the continent, we're all waiting for that ruling by the Ugandan court. Many thanks, Solomon Serawanja. Of course, I'm going to link up with him in the coming few days as that story develops. And that link or that talk with Solomon Serawanja from Uganda takes Bottomline Africa to a very short break. But when we return, remember, we'll have our studio discussion, which revolves around the upcoming devolution conference. I'm going to speak to Samburu's governor, Moses Lenol Kulal, is going to tell us perhaps some of the gains made there in Samburu at a time when Samburu has been ranked as the only 4 counties who've collected enough revenue this year. I'm also going to link up with governance expert Kevin Osido. All this after this very short break. But first, here's Destination Africa.